There is a strange paradox at the heart of human society. Most of us live our daily lives believing we are free, free to choose what we buy, what we do, and even who we become. And yet, if we pause long enough to look beneath the surface, an unsettling truth begins to reveal itself. Our choices are rarely our own. The clothes we wear, the careers we pursue, the values we hold, even the dreams we chase, all of these are quietly shaped, not by force, but by invisible powers of culture, economy, and ideology. This is the subtle genius of modern control. Unlike the tyrants of history, who ruled with chains, prisons, and armies, today's systems guide us with persuasion, with desire, with the careful shaping of what we imagine to be possible. You are not beaten into submission, you are guided into compliance, and often you thank the system for it. Karl Marx, writing in the 19th century, was one of the first to notice this. He saw that the true power of those who rule is not simply in owning factories or armies, but in controlling the stories we tell ourselves about work, value, and freedom. Marx believed that the ruling ideas of every age are nothing less than the ideas of its ruling class. In other words, you don't need whips if you can control people's imagination. And yet, Marx was not the only one who wrestled with this puzzle. From Plato's allegory of the cave to Foucault's analysis of disciplinary power, philosophers have long asked, how is it that human beings can be controlled not through violence, but through the shaping of thought itself? In this video, we will explore 6 profound insights into this quiet form of power. Each one is a revelation, a way of seeing the invisible strings that tug at us daily. And more importantly, each one offers a way to loosen those strings, to step closer to something that might resemble true freedom. Picture this. You're walking through a shopping mall or scrolling through your phone. At first, you're not looking for anything in particular, but then something catches your eye, a sleek advertisement, an image of someone smiling, someone who seems effortlessly confident, attractive, fulfilled. Beneath it, a product, a pair of shoes, a new car, a vacation package, or even just a cup of coffee. Suddenly, you feel a pull. It's subtle, but undeniable, a little spark of wanting. And in that instant, it feels as though this desire comes from within you, as though you've just discovered something you were missing. But pause for a moment. Where did that desire really come from? Karl Marx argued that capitalism has a peculiar way of shaping our longings. He called it commodity fetishism, the strange illusion that the value of an object lies in its magical ability to make us happier, more desirable, more complete. What we don't see, hidden behind the glossy surface, is the human labor, the exploitation, and the machinery of production that actually give the object its existence. We are taught from childhood not just to consume things, but to see them as answers to our inner emptiness. The phone is not just a phone, it is belonging. The dress is not just fabric, it is beauty. The car is not transportation, it is status. Desires are carefully engineered to make us equate our worth with what we own. Psychologists echo this. Edward Bernays, Freud's nephew, often called the father of public relations, realized in the 20th century that people don't buy products, they buy identities. He helped turn smoking into a symbol of women's liberation, convincing countless women that a cigarette was not poison, but empowerment. What was this if not the manufacturing of desire? And this is where the trap lies. When your longings are orchestrated by someone else, you can spend your entire life chasing things that never truly satisfy you. You feel free, but your very sense of self has been guided by forces outside you. Here lies the genius of control without force. You don't need to chain people if you can seduce them into running toward the caves themselves. But there's a deeper question. If many of our desires are planted, how do we know which ones are truly our own? How do we separate the longing that arises from the depths of our being, from the cravings whispered into us by an economy that profits from our dissatisfaction? Nietzsche offers a clue. He warned that most people live in what he called herd morality, chasing after what society tells them to value, confusing conformity with fulfillment. To break free, he argued, requires a kind of courage, the willingness to stand apart from the herd and ask, what do I truly value? What do I long for when the noise of society is stripped away? This is not easy work. It requires silence, reflection, and often discomfort. For when you peel away the desires handed down to you, what remains might not look glamorous, profitable, or even socially acceptable, but it might be yours. So the first insight is this: your desires are not neutral. They are shaped, engineered, and sold back to you. To awaken is to look at every impulse, the things you want, the things you chase, and ask, who planted this inside me, and do I still wish to carry it? This question, uncomfortable as it is the beginning of freedom, for only when you begin to reclaim your desires can you begin to reclaim yourself. Imagine a child walking into their first classroom. The desks are neatly arranged in rows. A bell rings to signal when to speak, when to eat, when to move. The child quickly learns that raising their hand at the wrong time brings disapproval. Speaking too loudly earns a stern look. Day after day, they are shaped to sit, listen, obey. Now fast forward 20 years. The same child, now an adult, sits in an office cubicle. The bell has become the calendar alert. The teacher's frown has become the manager's email. Once again, behavior is subtly corrected, shaped, monitored. But now the adult doesn't even notice the discipline. It feels natural. This is what Michel Foucault called disciplinary power. Unlike the kings and dictators of old, who controlled people through visible displays of violence, modern societies operate differently. Power no longer needs to be imposed from above with whips and chains. It is built into the very fabric of daily life. Schools, hospitals, offices, prisons, all of these institutions quietly train us to regulate ourselves. Foucault used the metaphor of the Panopticon, a prison design imagined by Jeremy Bentham, in which every cell is visible to a single watchtower. Prisoners never know when they are being observed. The result? They begin to behave as though they are always being watched. Surveillance is internalized. Control becomes self-control. And isn't that what so much of modern life feels like? We carry our own watchtowers in our pockets, smartphones buzzing with notifications, cameras on every street corner, performance reviews at work, likes on social media posts. Nobody needs to threaten us anymore. We learn to monitor ourselves, to curate our image, to perform within the boundaries of what is acceptable. The soft prison of normality is powerful because it is invisible. If someone locked you in chains, you would resist. But if you are shaped from birth to think, feel, and act within certain norms, You call it freedom. Marx sensed this too, though from a different angle. He saw how the ruling class does not only control wealth, but also the cultural institutions that define what is normal, reasonable, or natural. In this way, the system teaches you to desire conformity, to take pride in fitting in, to fear stepping outside the lines. The irony is profound. We believe we are free because no one is visibly forcing us, but in reality, our thoughts and behaviors have already been pre-structured by the invisible hand of culture and discipline. Think of the young graduate choosing a career. Perhaps they dream of becoming a painter or a philosopher, but they have already learned what is realistic, what will earn approval, what will be seen as respectable. So they choose the safer path, not because anyone forced them, but because they have been taught the boundaries of the acceptable. This is why Foucault's insight is so unsettling. It suggests that control today does not primarily live in governments or police forces, but within us, in our habits, in our fears of social disapproval, in our quiet willingness to keep ourselves in line. So the second revelation is this: the walls of our prison are made of normality itself, and to see them requires a painful kind of awareness. You must be willing to ask, which of my choices are truly mine, and which are the echo of a silent training I never consented to. This is not a call to rebel against everything, but it is an invitation to notice the moments when you act, not because you want to, but because you are afraid of standing out. For it is in those moments that the invisible strings of control tug the hardest. We are told a simple story from the time we are children: work hard, follow the rules, and success will come. Society, we're assured, is a level playing field. Those who rise have earned it. Those who fall have only themselves to blame. It's an appealing story, fair, clean, comforting. But like many comforting stories, it begins to unravel the moment you look too closely. Consider this: a child born into wealth attends the best schools, has tutors, travels the world, inherits connections and opportunities invisible to most others. Another child, equally intelligent, equally capable, is born into poverty, working long hours, navigating unsafe neighborhoods, carrying invisible burdens that eat away at energy and focus. If both compete in the same system, can we really pretend they started at the same line? Karl Marx was ruthless in unmasking this illusion. He argued that capitalism disguises its inequalities behind the myth of fairness. By telling workers that they are free to succeed if they only work hard enough, the system shifts responsibility away from itself. If you struggle, it is framed as your personal failure, never the structures. But the critique goes even deeper. With Nietzsche, he warned of what he called slave morality, a morality that praises obedience, humility, and self-denial, while condemning ambition, independence, and strength. In a society dominated by such values, people are trained to accept their lot, to celebrate virtues that keep them tame, while quietly resenting those who break free. The result is a double illusion. On one side, the wealthy justify their privilege by saying they earned it. On the other, the struggling are told to blame themselves rather than question the game itself. In truth, the so-called meritocracy often functions less like a ladder of opportunity and more like a treadmill, keeping people running in place, striving endlessly, believing that the next promotion, the next degree, the next sacrifice will finally deliver the reward. But the finish line keeps moving. Modern psychology confirms this. Studies on learned helplessness show that when people repeatedly face obstacles beyond their control, they begin to internalize failure as a personal flaw. They stop resisting. They stop imagining alternatives. They keep running on the treadmill, convinced the fault lies only in themselves. And so, a person can spend a lifetime chasing a promise that was never designed to be fulfilled. Here we must pause for a sobering reflection. This illusion of meritocracy is not maintained by cruelty alone. It is maintained by hope. Hope that if you just work harder, if you just give more, the system will finally notice you. Hope can be a powerful chain. But there is also a way through. The way is not to abandon effort or responsibility. Nietzsche despised laziness as much as he despised conformity. Instead, the way is to redefine what success means outside of the game you've been handed. Nietzsche called for the Übermensch, not a superior being in some shallow sense, but a human who creates their own values instead of inheriting them blindly. Marx, in his own way, sought the liberation of human potential from the narrow cage of profit and competition. So the third revelation is this: the playing field is not as level as we are told, and much of what passes for fairness is an illusion that keeps us running in circles. The question is not simply, am I winning within the game? The deeper question is, do I even believe in the rules of this game? Perhaps the most radical act is not to run harder, but to step off the treadmill and begin imagining a life measured by your own values, not the system, quote, S. In ancient Rome, the emperors faced a problem. How do you keep a restless population from rising up against poverty, inequality, and corruption? The solution was as brilliant as it was sinister. Panem et circens, bread and circens, bread and circuses. Keep the people fed just enough to survive, and keep them endlessly entertained. Gladiatorial games, theatrical performances, chariot races, all designed to give the masses distraction instead of revolution. Fast forward 2,000 years, and the strategy has only grown more sophisticated. Today, our circuses are everywhere. Streaming platforms that autoplay the next episode, social media feeds that never end, sports seasons that cycle endlessly, keeping loyalty and passion inflamed, celebrity dramas, gossip, and reality shows that provide us with endless stories to consume. None of these things are inherently evil, but when stacked together, they perform the same function as the Roman amphitheater. They pacify. The unsettling truth is this: if you are endlessly entertained, you are less likely to notice, question, or resist the structures that exploit you. Distraction becomes the gentlest form of domination. Marx warned of this tendency, though in his time the opium of the people was religion. He argued that systems of power offer comforting illusions to keep people compliant, not necessarily to harm them maliciously, but to prevent them from demanding real change. In today's secular age, religion is no longer the primary opiate. Entertainment has taken its place. Consider how our most precious resource, attention, is siphoned away. Hours spent scrolling, binging, watching, consuming. Each moment of distraction is a moment not spent, reflecting, creating, organizing, resisting, or even truly living. Psychologists describe this as dopamine hijacking. Entertainment technologies are designed to keep us hooked, not fulfilled. The reward is instant, shallow, and fleeting, but it is enough to keep us coming back. And perhaps you've felt it yourself, that subtle sense of emptiness after hours online, as though you were busy the whole time, yet achieved nothing. This is not accidental. It is the system functioning as designed. But here lies the deeper danger. Entertainment does not just waste time, it shapes desire. It tells us who the heroes are, what lifestyles are glamorous, what identities are worthy of admiration. Bread and circuses are not only distractions, they are lessons. Lessons in what to value, what to envy, and what to ignore. A question arises. When was the last time you sat in silence without reaching for a screen? For many, silence is unbearable because it strips away the distractions that keep deeper anxieties hidden. And in that silence, the truths we are avoiding might surface. The Roman emperors understood that a distracted crowd is a docile crowd. Today's rulers of culture and technology understand the same. If your evenings are filled with endless entertainment, you are far less likely to wonder why your days are filled with endless labor. So the fourth revelation is this: distraction is not neutral. It is a tool of pacification. This does not mean rejecting joy, laughter, or art. It means noticing when entertainment crosses the line from nourishment to sedation. To ask yourself, am I consuming this because it enriches me or because it numbs me? For in that distinction lies the difference between a life lived awake and a life quietly lulled into sleep. Think for a moment about the last time you bought something, clothes, a gadget, maybe even a cup of coffee. Chances are you weren't just buying the thing itself, you were buying what it said about you. That coffee wasn't just caffeine, it was a signal. I'm the kind of person who chooses this brand. That jacket wasn't just warmth, it was a message. This is who I am. Modern systems of power have understood something profound. To truly control people, you don't just shape their behavior, you shape their identity. Sigmund Freud opened the door to this realization when he argued that much of human behavior is driven not by reason, but by unconscious desires. His nephew, Edward Bernays, as we mentioned earlier, weaponized this insight. He helped industries sell products, not by appealing to logic, but by linking them to identity, a cigarette as liberation, a car as masculinity, lipstick as empowerment. Carl Jung carried the idea further with his exploration of archetypes, universal patterns of meaning that live deep in the human psyche. Advertisers and cultural institutions tap into these archetypes constantly. The hero archetype sells us athletic gear. The caregiver archetype sells us household products. The rebel archetype sells us leather jackets and motorcycles. We are enticed not just to buy, but to inhabit an identity that aligns with what the system has packaged for us. And identity is sticky. Once we accept a label, introvert, extrovert, leader, artist, parent, consumer, we begin to filter our choices through it. We protect it. We fear losing it. In this way, identity becomes one of the strongest levers of control. Marx saw a version of this when he analyzed class. Workers were not only exploited economically, they were given an identity that defined their place in the system. They were told, "You are a laborer. This is your role, stay in your lane." And today, though the language has changed, the logic remains. We are endlessly sorted, categorized, targeted, told who we are and who we are not. Psychology calls this social identity theory. Our sense of self is deeply tied to the groups we belong to, and those in power understand that if you can shape group identity, you can shape behavior, convince people they are part of a particular tribe, and they will police themselves to fit it. Think of how politics now functions less as debate and more as identity performance, or how brands cultivate communities of loyal followers, or how online culture rewards you for fitting neatly into a label while punishing deviation. The quiet danger is this: when identity is handed to you rather than discovered by you, you can spend your entire life living out someone else's script, believing you are authentic, while in truth, you are only rehearsing roles the system has written. But there is another path. Jung believed that beyond the archetypes society projects onto us, there lies the deeper work of individuation, the process of becoming whole, of integrating the many parts of ourselves that exist beneath the surface. To walk this path is difficult because it requires peeling away false identities, confronting uncomfortable truths, and standing apart from the roles others assign to us. So the fifth revelation is this: identity is the most intimate tool of control and the most urgent place of liberation. The question becomes, who would I be if I were not performing the identities I've been handed? This is not about rejecting identity altogether, but about reclaiming it, to choose rather than be chosen, to live not as a consumer of roles, but as a creator of one's own story. There is a moment, subtle, almost fragile, when a person begins to see the strings. It might come after a late night scrolling through endless feeds, realizing that none of it left you fulfilled. It might come when you notice that your so-called dream job feels strangely hollow, or when you catch yourself buying something you don't need, only to wonder, why did I want this at all? This moment is unsettling. It feels like standing backstage at a theater, suddenly seeing the ropes, the pulleys, the actors in costume. The magic of the performance dissolves, and yet what replaces it is not relief, but vertigo. Karl Marx believed that awakening to the hidden structures of control is both liberating and painful. He saw ideology as a veil, a set of stories that make exploitation appear natural. To pierce that veil is to glimpse reality, but reality can be harsh. It reveals injustice, manipulation, and absurdity. Albert Camus, writing a century later, described something similar in his philosophy of the absurd. Human beings, he argued, long for clarity, for meaning, for order. But when we look honestly at the world, what we often find instead is chaos, indifference, and contradiction. To awaken is to feel this tension, the desire for meaning colliding with a universe that does not provide it neatly wrapped. This is why many resist awakening. It is far easier and often far more pleasant to remain entertained, distracted, lulled into the comfort of illusions. Seeing the strings means losing the comfort of the story. And yet, Camus insisted, it is precisely here, in the confrontation with absurdity, that a deeper freedom becomes possible. When you no longer cling to illusions, you are free to create your own meaning. When you recognize that so many of your desires, values, and roles have been handed to you, you can finally begin to ask, what do I choose instead? This is not freedom in the shallow sense, doing whatever you want, whenever you want. That kind of freedom often leads to emptiness. Rather, it is freedom in the profound sense, the freedom to live deliberately, to choose values, not because they are profitable or popular, but because they are true to the deepest part of yourself. Marx dreamed of a society in which human beings were no longer alienated, cut off from their labor, from each other, from themselves. Camus dreamed of individuals who, even in the face of absurdity, could live with dignity, courage, and creativity. Both visions converge on the same insight. Awakening is the beginning of authentic life. But awakening is not an event. It is a practice. To stay awake requires vigilance. To resist sedation requires strength. To live without illusions requires courage. Perhaps the simplest way to describe it is this: awakening is choosing to live with eyes open, even when it hurts. So the sixth revelation is this: to awaken to the strings of control is to step into a deeper, riskier, but more authentic kind of freedom. The question that remains, and it is one only you can answer, is this: do you want to see clearly, even if it costs you comfort? For those who answer yes, life does not become easier, but it does become real. And in the end, that may be the only freedom worth having. We began with a paradox. You are told that you are free, free to choose, free to dream, free to live as you wish. And yet, when we look closer, we discover a quieter truth. Much of our freedom has already been shaped, guided, and limited by forces we rarely notice. Across our journey, we uncovered 6 revelations. Desire is engineered, not discovered. Much of what you want was planted in you, sold to you, and disguised as your own longing. The soft prison of normality. You are trained, gently but firmly, to monitor yourself and to fear straying beyond the invisible walls of the acceptable. The myth of meritocracy. You are told the game is fair, but the rules are written to keep most running in circles, hoping for rewards that never truly arrive. Entertainment as pacification, endless distraction, keeps you docile, numbing the questions that might awaken you. Identity as a tool of power. Even your sense of self can be packaged and sold, keeping you rehearsing roles that benefit others more than they free you. Awakening to freedom. To see the strings is painful, but only in awareness does the possibility of authentic life begin. Put together, these insights form a difficult picture. Control today is not maintained with chains or violence, but with something far more subtle: the shaping of thought, of desire, of imagination itself. But this picture is not meant to leave you hopeless. Quite the opposite. For if control without force works by making us unaware, then the very act of becoming aware is already resistance. Every time you pause before buying, scrolling, or conforming, every time you ask, "Is this really mine?" you loosen the strings a little more. This does not mean rejecting society or fleeing into cynicism. It means remembering that you are not only a consumer, a worker, or a role. You are a human being, capable of reflection, capable of choice, capable of creating meaning that no system can fully script. The Roman emperors feared a restless crowd, so they gave bread and circuses. What might those in power fear today? Not anger alone, but awareness. Awareness that spreads. Awareness that whispers to others. We do not need to live only as we are told. We can imagine something different. And so I leave you with a challenge. Begin in small ways to reclaim what has been taken. Reclaim your attention from the endless scroll. Reclaim your desires from the marketplace. Reclaim your identity from the roles handed to you. Reclaim your freedom, not by waiting for permission, but by choosing to live deliberately. None of us can escape society's influence completely, but we can learn to see it. We can learn to resist its most suffocating illusions. And in that resistance, we can begin to carve out a space for authenticity, dignity, and truth. This is the work of awakening, not once, but again and again. If these reflections resonated with you, I invite you to stay on this journey with us. Subscribe, share your thoughts, join the conversation. Every week we explore questions that lie beneath the surface, questions that may not make life easier, but make it infinitely more real. And remember, the world does not need more people who blindly conform. It needs people who can see clearly, who can think courageously, and who can live awake. Perhaps you are already becoming one of them.